we go.
We're back.
We're back,
man. It's April 28th.
Thursday.
It's a Thursday, 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. This is the Crushing Iron podcast. We are episode 576.
77, man.
77? Sorry. I'm stuck on the last one.
Yeah.
It is the last one of April, though. We're about to be, as NSYNC would say, it's going to be May. But it's a beautiful day here in Chattanooga. Hope you're having a wonderful week so far. I don't know. I think so. It is like I said, wonderful and beautiful day here in Chattanooga as we are counting down the weeks, as all of you are, to Chattanooga 70.3. We will be at the expo, so come see us. A little more info on that on our social media and also towards the end of the cast. But first and foremost, we welcome you. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Your time is valuable, so we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We'll do race previews. We'll also do race recaps, which we will do today. I'll have on the occasional guest. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, both as coaches, athletes, and humans on this planet. We'll also talk a lot about what our athletes are going through or went through and our observations, like we will today, through races and in training. We work with a wide range of athletes, from beginner level athletes looking to finish their first sprint all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to Kona, everyone in between and from all over. We work with a few local athletes, but the majority of the people we work with are all over the U.S. and across the globe. So we get a wide variety, which is great, and it helps keep us on our toes as coaches, and I think makes it more engaging. So we don't discriminate. And a lot of people ask, "Hey, would you work with someone like me?" I'm like, I think I can speak for you too. Like, we like to work with people, right? It's like, we work with people first. The athletic stuff, the triathlon or running and cycling, swimming comes secondary. So we like to work with people. So oftentimes we use the conversations we have with them and feedback loop and training peaks to drive the discussion of the day. We'll also go into Facebook. We have a group in there called Crushing Iron Group. If you want to be a part of that, just answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. A lot of awesome people in there, wonderful community, a lot of seasoned veterans in there, and a lot of beginners. And then again, just like the athletes we work with, everyone in between. So if you have questions, let it rip. Ask them, and you'll probably get some really, really good feedback. Because in a sport that's super confusing and a ton of information and a bunch of different ways to go, it's nice to have a place you can trust. So when we hope that's our community for you. That's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have one agenda. And that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey. Yeah.
And as Coach said, we will be down at the tent.
Down at the tent.
The expo, yes. Chat 70.3. And there's a lot of people racing. We're going to have enough room for all those people in that tent.
That's something little Debbie might have to take into account.
And we'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there for the duration of
the duration.
All of the hours. Yeah,
the open hours.
Well, they're all open hours. I will be there. Wow. I'll bring a sacked lunch, or I'll just walk on over to Little Debbie Expo and grab a few Twinkies and a couple Nutter Butters, and I'll probably call it a day. But no,
we can't make that promise.
Yeah, I know you can't. Well,
I'm racing.
You're racing. You got stuff to do, and
I'll have a selfie stand.
Yeah, you'll have a selfie stand. 25 cents per selfie, 50 cents for panoramic view. But no, we'll be there. And really looking forward. We've got about between all of our coaches and the club, we've got about 60 plus athletes coming in town to race. It's a big team race for us. So we're excited to see our athletes in person and on course, having a weekend. And we know quite a few of our listeners tune in. We'll be there. So yeah, we'll be there. You don't have to come drive anywhere. You can just walk, go check in, come by, say hi. We'll have a bunch of gear there for sale, visors, hats, maybe even some hoodies, t-shirts, maybe some long sleeves left over, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we're going to have it. So come by, support us, or just say hi. And we'll have a little more info as well about all the things that we do. So yeah, come say hi. We'd love to see you. And again, in a world where people have to say, in real life, come see us in real life. We'll be there. Are we probably the only, obviously that's not the only thing we do, but we're probably one of the very few, if ever, podcasts that have been like, you know what, we'll have a booth at a race. Most podcasts are like, nah, we don't want to be at one of those. But you know what the hell? We figure we'll put some money down and give us a better opportunity to come to meet the masses.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
Man, I thought you were going to say, maybe we should do a live podcast.
No, dude, I don't like any kind of, I don't like doing stuff like that. I'll pass, and we'll front load it earlier in the week with the little Chattanooga 70.3 preview, and a few other things. We'll get lock and loaded, as a preview, but today is a recap. I mentioned this on our cast on Tuesday, that we would be going through the lessons and observations as a coach, we had about 20 athletes go to Texas, and I knew a bunch of other people that were doing it. And when I say lessons learned and observations, this is straight from the mouth of athletes, from 16-hour finishers all the way up to people on the podium and everyone in between, about the experiences. And then also just observations as a coach. I think every race, listen, no matter your time, no matter what happens, as long as nothing should be wasted, right? As long as you take the opportunity to learn from it. And I think there are just a ton of lessons to be learned, obviously from any race, right? You should be able to take, no race is a failure unless you fail to learn from it, right? And then when I say learn, I also mean apply what you learn to future training, not just get stuck back in the back. Yeah, that's the tricky part, right? It's like, lesson learned. I'm like, but is lesson applied, right? It's like, so everybody learns a lesson, and we hear that phrase a lot, but it's like, but are you willing to make the change to fix it? And I have a lot to go through, and I will warn, this may ruffle some feathers today, in terms of what I observed. This
will be good for any Ironman.
Exactly. It should be a great reminder for everyone, right? And if you didn't race it, then consider yourself warned, right? Consider yourself lucky that you didn't have to be part of the sample set that is the 2022 reminder of, you guys better get your shit together, right? Like Ironman is hard. 70.3s are hard. If you didn't follow the race, you haven't heard about it, your friends are doing it. And obviously, like you said, great thing to mention. These things are great for every distance, right? And the biggest thing about Texas was a few things. Like one, it was a hot day, but then again, it's Texas, right? It's going to be hot. But one of the things that you mentioned last week in the preview that I thought was such a great thing that bring up is, even when you see 80s, right? Going from 40s and 50s to 80s is going to feel like going from 70s to going to 100s, right? It's not so much, it's the heat, but it's also the fact that it's the difference in what you've been training in, right? So I think that was a great point you made last week. So it was hot, for whatever reason. And again, like I'll always be that guy pushing against, the swim temps. It was like 75 and change. I didn't think it was gonna be wetsuit legal. Apparently it was. Shocker. Dude, 75 is way too hot to be putting people in a wetsuit. I'm just gonna say it. It's way too hot. I think they need to drop it down to 74 to make it a little bit safer. Obviously, I get it. You want to have as many people in wetsuits as possible because it allows people to finish the swim a little bit better and be a little more confident. But I think, and I talked to a lot of athletes, that overheating was huge. The swim was crowded. Like we said, get in the water early, because once you get in the channel, it's crowded. And then the bike was the bike was the deal. The bike was, and this is again from reading pro interviews, and let's be honest, we all kind of get caught up in prisoner of the moment, hardest race ever, right? Every time, and we're all guilty of it, right? Every race we just do, it's like, dude, hardest race ever, right? It's like the Lake Tahoe of 2012 or 2013, whatever the race that was. But it was, even from, again, for reading from some of the pros, the wind was hellacious. It even surpassed like the typical wind, because we have a bunch of athletes in Texas, and they had all been out there training for basically like 3 or 4 weeks before that outside. And they even, in basically every single time they came back, like, God, I wish the wind would stop. I wish the wind would stop. I bet you don't now, because you were prepared. You might not have been prepared for 20 mile an hour winds and 35 mile an hour gusts, but you were prepared for wind. You knew the psychological toll. You'd been there. You had done that. But the wind is what ate people's lunch. Not just the fact that you had to grind yourself against a headwind, but also I think people really underestimated how hot you were going to get with those long stretches of a tailwind. There's no cooling effect, right? It's kind of like running up a hill, right? You're going downhill, you get the breeze. You're running uphill, you're going a little bit slower. You don't have the wind. You just generate heat like that. So you're generating heat people probably still smashed from the headwind. And another thing, and I heard this from multiple people, is that you weren't prepared for the heat, you weren't prepared for the wind, you weren't prepared to fuel in that kind of heat, but also I would probably imagine most people under-fueled because they weren't able to take one hand off the bike to get their bottles in, right? They in the headwind, a lot of people said they were just trying to, we had athletes comment, I pulled over to stop and drink to make sure I wasn't going to fall off my bike because it was that windy. And then of course you deplete people and you crush people on the bike and they get off, and what do? It makes for a long, long day on the run. And there is not much shade there. So it's made for a very, very hard day. And again, we said this on the cast on Tuesday, but mad props to anytime you finish a race, props, right? Because it's always going to have every race has its own kind of nuance of hard conditions, right? No race is special. Everything has their thing, right? Yeah. Everything has their thing.
As you're saying, that hardest race ever thing, I was just thinking back to every single Ironman I did and like how I felt at the end of it. And it's never like I went, that was kind of smooth and everything went really well and I feel really good right now. I mean, there's certain times, I think that's the thing about it, is sometimes I've felt pretty decent the next day. Other days I've felt completely trashed. And I think maybe the next few days are when we should probably make that statement. And because they are all difficult. There's all something going on out there. And I think the other thing is what you said about training and wind and how the race, it's kind of a weird thing because the race in some ways should be easier than training, because you're going to be out maybe hopefully in similar conditions, training harder at harder efforts than you would be in the race. But then you get in the race and you're like, damn, this is a race.
Yep.
So I need to go harder. And I think, we talk a lot about, perceived effort and things like that. And if you're not, really going to be glued to, I'd be interesting to hear, cause I'm sure you're going to have it, the normalized power numbers versus, versus average and see how that all panned out, because it's just very difficult to rein in your effort into a wind like that. And I think that's one of probably the most underestimated things, is that whatever that number is or whatever that effort is, it's a lot harder than you're probably used to. And then you're going to do that for 112 miles and run a marathon. It's just, it's just not usually going to go that well, probably.
No. And I think, and again, one of the biggest things, here come the haters.
Oh,
get your ass outside. Like you can say,
I can't believe people are haters about that.
Oh, for sure. Well, I can ride the course. You're not riding the course. You're not. You're riding a visual of the road. That's it.
Strap a bungee cord around your back.
Just stop telling people you rode the course today inside. You didn't ride the course. Okay. You didn't. You rode virtual roads. Okay. You don't feel, was your bike shaking? No. Right. From the potholes, the divots, were you having a turn? No. Could you feel the wind? No. Could you feel the heat? No. Stop saying you rode the course. Stop relying so much on virtual everything to prepare you for a race. Yes, I get wanting to be inside. I get wanting to be safe. But if you really want to be prepared, get your ass outside, right? You may not be your during the week run, but get your ass outside on the weekend, right? And ride out in you want to prepare for a course, then prepare in the conditions, right? Don't give me virtual paved roads and pixels on your iPad. That's not riding a course. That's you getting a visual. Like it's like me being like, hey man, what do you do? Oh, I went to Florida today. I picked up a postcard. No, I didn't go to Florida. Okay, I saw it. Okay. I'm sitting back in my, having a non-alcoholic daiquiri with my swim trunks and my tank top, and like, hey, where are you going? I'm going to Hawaii today. Really? Are you? I'm like, yeah, I got to put up my iPad right here. I'm going. No, you're not. Okay. You're not going to get sunburned. You're not going to feel the wind. You're not going to know how to hydrate. No way at all. And you can heat prep, you can whatever prep, but the mental and physical toll that so many people had that was taken out of them by not getting outside, it crushed people's dreams, right? It was so frustrating. The athletes that I talked to that went and rode outside a ton in the wind, they were like, it was definitely windy, But thank God I got outside and rode them. And as much as frustrating and as aggravating as it was to do my long rides and see my miles per hour suffer and just be aggravating on race day, I was ready, right? Yeah. It was harder. You know what doesn't get you ready for that? Even your little, like, the Wahoo fan that's supposed to simulate a headwind. Give me a fucking break. Okay. It doesn't simulate a headwind. Okay. It's a skinny, tall fan. Okay. It doesn't simulate a headwind. We have to become, we talked about it a few times last week. We try to keep making things easier on ourselves, right? We try to make things easier, get worse, and it's only going to get worse. Like
the metaverse is coming.
I don't even know what the metaverse is. You keep saying, I have no idea what it is. The easiest, everyone's going to easy. Inside. Yes, it's safe for sure. Didn't roll safe for a lot of people on last Saturday when they were getting people are just mentally and emotionally demolished. And I'll just tell you right now, and you and I agree on this 100%. Ironman racing is 90% from the chin up.
Yeah.
It is from that. And I'll be honest, I had a couple athletes who the last 5 or 6 months through life, through unmotivation, through whatever, training wise, if you looked at it, right, and you didn't know them and you just looked at it and you thought, and look at the training and they're like, yeah, I'm going to go to Ironman Texas. And then you knew the conditions. Your first thought was, no way. Not happening.
Not a chance.
No business finishing a race like that. Not with the heat, not with the wind, not with the distance. No business. If you just look, which is, again, as a coach, that's why I never tell people you shouldn't do that. Because if you're tough enough mentally, you can get it done. You know what they got? They got it done, right? Because it's a choice. And so I think people are really starting to underestimate the apples to people trying to make an apples comparison on the virtual courses or doing this inside. Like, it's like telling people you average, this in the swim pool, then, oh, what shocker, you don't average in open water. Okay. It's not apples to apples. And frankly, it's like apples to broccoli. Okay. It's so different. So different. And then the other thing, I'll talk about the bike, and I got a lot to say today. Being light, right? Like, this is a issue and a problem, I think, within our sport and endurance sports in general, is people have a lot of individuals have an obsession with the lighter, the better. Okay. You didn't want to be light when the wind is going 30 mile an hour, right? You want to be strong. You want to be fit. Okay. The lighter you were, the more you were getting blown around like a ragweed. Okay. Be strong, right? And yes, I get to the run course, I'm lighter, I can dissipate heat easier. Yes, you can. But not if you're walking, because the bike destroyed you. And it's just, listen, we all need reminders. And like, I think I mentioned this last week, was, it probably didn't sound like too much of a pep talk, but when I got on the Zoom call last week with the athletes and I wasn't able to make it down, I reminded them over and over and over again, and not to psych them out, right? It's going to be really, really, really hard and really, really, really windy. I wasn't trying to psych them out. I was trying to prepare them for what was going to happen. Not, oh, you got this, man. You got this. Like, let's go crush it. Yeah, you might. But if you just think it's going to be another easy day, like it was inside with your 9 water bottles and your fridge and your, barista, you had another thing coming.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing, right? Is, every year, the first time I go outside, the wind's like 5 miles an hour. And I'm like, Jesus, it's windy out here. Holy crap. It really, it's all relative.
Right. It's relative.
And then because seriously, I've even done races, like early season races, where I haven't had a chance to really get out much or whatever. And it was kind of like the wind was like 7 miles an hour or something like that. And it just feels so much different. So I can't imagine 25 to 30 if you haven't been outside. We always talk about, or I always do, is I think there's something different about being outside, period, that either dehydrates you more, or just the oxygen that this was like freer oxygen getting to your brain or something like that just tires you out. Like, that first day you're out playing or working in the yard, and you come in the afternoon and you're just ready for a massive nap.
Yep.
So there's something different, and it's just acclimation to, I don't know, sun, I suppose, for sure, wind, just general conditions, maybe. In doing harder work in those conditions rather than just walking in the car and going to work or something like that.
Yeah. You said, I think this year, maybe you and I both did it, but one year I remember I rode in the lab the whole time. That was it. And then I went to Muncie and it was windy, apparently, but I had ridden in the lab, which is, like it's an airfield in Nashville. If you've been to one of our camps, it's just it's windy. No matter what, headwind, tailwind, you deal with it, right? You come to expect it. But like you said, everything is relative, right? And I remember I got done, a bunch of people were like, oh my God, it was so windy. I was like, really? I didn't feel it, right? It's not because the wind wasn't there. It's because my body and my mind had become so conditioned to what wind feels like. Like the other way, like you say, first right outside, you're like, man, it was windy today. You go and look back and you're like 3 miles an hour out of the Southwest.
I know,
yeah. Oh, geez, like I got a ways to go. It's all, you have to put yourself, like your fitness is useless unless it's able to be applied to the conditions in which you race in, right? And people are going to continue to be willing to sacrifice full performance for comfort, right? Because my watts might suffer. I can't get in this perfect looking, ride on my graph. It's like, listen, if you really, really, really want to apply, you got to get out in real time. You got to make time. And yes, does it have to be every workout? No. And I get it. There are logistical challenges, there's time challenges. We all have busy lives, but if you have the opportunity to ride outside, condition yourself to the conditions. And people are not conditioning themselves like they used to. They are let's be honest, getting soft. 100% getting soft to the conditions outside. And I do. People ask, oh, look, things are getting windier out there. No, it's not. You know what's happening? It's becoming so it's becoming relatively harder to us because we're not doing it anymore, right? We're not getting out there. It feels harder because we've gone so far in the other direction that what used to be just a standard old day, now it's like, oh, that was the worst race. Everything like, dude, that was like normal. Like 6 years ago, no one complained about the weather because all we did was ride outside. Like, and that's what we did. Yeah. And so I think that was such a huge factor in people's race. And one of the other ones this goes back to lessons learned as a coach, and this, like, what your athletes do, how we train, you get, especially for usually like we're on the lower side of what most people do when they train for races. And you get a lot of the panic texts and screenshots of the local Ironman Texas training feed of what these people are doing and these insane workouts they're doing in February. And so I always when they send those to me, I always just keep them, right? Because I can't do I can't really do the Facebook feed thing, but I always in my mind create like a little Rolodex of the insane amount of overtraining people do for these races. And then on race day or the day after, I just go back and take a peek. How did so-and-so end up? How did so-and-so pan out? What did all this volume and stuff get to? You know what it usually gets? 9 times out of nothing or 9 times out of 10, not that great of a time versus what they're actually doing. So many people just inexplicably overtrain for these races to where they become to the point where they're just exercising. You're not training. And to move into that, I had a a text back and forth with an athlete that I used to coach, don't coach anymore, but we always chat and I mean, super, very, very accomplished athlete, multiple Kona overall winner at Ironman before. We're going back through training and just talking and I made a comment about the amount of training this person was doing. And I said, for the stress that you're in, and this goes for everybody, right? Take the numbers and just, relatively scale them back for what you're doing as an athlete. And this is so prevalent with first timers or people that follow a book that, or a plan that's just way overdoes it, that people have a 20-hour, 25-hour week like this athlete did. And I just flat out said, what happened is that you did about 14 to 15 hours of real quality work. And then you exercised for 10 more hours. And that exercise didn't do you any good because what it did is it created so much stress, you didn't have the ability to recover from the 16 hours of work that you really did, right? So you'd be better off not doing 25 hours. You'd be much better off doing 15 to 16 quality and spending those 10 hours that you just committed to worrying about exercising too much or being fit or doing some extra work, recovering, right? Kick your feet up, take a freaking nap, right? Hydrate, fuel, rest, limit stress. People are so obsessed with more is better. It's a really weird kind of world we live in now where people's obsession is more is better. And it's like butting heads with, but how do we shortcut that? Right? It's like,
it's interesting.
It's a really it's a more is more. I got to do more. I think that's the mindset of endurance athletes with the shortcut mentality is so many athletes would be so much better off by scaling back their training 20 to 30% and making it not when I say quality, I don't mean, threshold, track, intervals all day, every day. I just mean, if you're going to dedicate if you have 20 hours right in the week, dedicate 16 of it to the best work you can possibly do, that where you wake up fresh, you're ready to go, you're ready to hit your sessions, and then you spend the time recovering so you can do it again. Not, trying to, smear extra work on top of it. That's only going to diminish the work you just did.
Yeah.
And that's something that you see, and I'm sure people notice this, like, athletes that, are on these Facebook pages, you see how much people overtrain for these races, and you wonder why on race day you have really nothing left to give, because basically you just been degrading your ability to physically perform for months, not just physically, but then a race like that, mentally and emotionally too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love what you said about the hacks versus the have to go longer and the volume. I'm me from day one, I've been like, probably skewing on the low side of volume.
Definitely skewing on the low side of volume.
I mean, because it's one of those things, like I talked about this this is one of the things I really work with my athletes, is just that believability. Like when I see, 6-8 weeks out from Ironman, I'm like, okay, they've got it. They're in there now. They've got the volume, in my mind anyway. And then, sometimes a double ride will pop up on the weekends, like a 4 and a 4. And I'll be like, man, you're looking a little fatigued here. How about a 4 and a 2 or something like that? And because to me, it's a mental thing, getting on that bike the second day in a row after a long ride and then going back out there. And if you can do that, that's a huge part. Like if you talk about 90% is mental in this game, at the race, it's like, how are you going to get through things? Or, what's that extra 2 hours of saddle pain going to do to your mindset? Little things like that really kind of pay off. And it's like, I'm just a really big believer in, you get to certain, we've talked about before where and I'm not saying this is ideal, but just for me, it works, because I know that sometimes when I go, well, I got to go, this much further in this workout, I'm not even going to work out the next day. And I'm thinking, a lot of times I've been to the pool with maybe a 3,000, 3,500, and I'll be at 2,500 going, I own this, I'm out. And I've talked to you about that. I don't know, it's all relative, but we have to think about it in terms of getting to the race with a good mindset and getting there, recovered and fresh and things like that. And sometimes I've always just really been interested in this idea of, 12 weeks out from an Ironman, what is an extra hour going to do right there? On the bike, you're out, you're just like cooked, and like, no, I got to get in an extra hour because that's like those types of things are weird little head juggles for me. That's fine. You had to go to a picnic or something, and
who cares?
And you're tired already. What is that going to do? It's like we program workouts, and nobody's perfect, whatever you want to say. It's like, you don't have, I guess what I'm saying is like nailing every single workout to the time is not going to guarantee you a good race. And you've just said it. It's like some of the athletes you had down there who didn't have any really business based on quote unquote traditional Ironman training, even racing, but they got through it.
None.
And I just think that's such a fascinating thing. So it's like, what are we going to do? How are you going to make your midweek rides more effective?
Yeah. People, and especially in this sport, people just keep trying to beat themselves down like that's a badge of honor, right? And we use a phrase all the time, going to a race 1% overtrained is much worse than going into it 100% undertrained, right? Because you're beat down on all fronts, right? And it's not about doing less, it's about doing the right amount, right? I think in the 10 plus years that I've coached full time, I don't think I've ever had an athlete in a 70.3 Ironman build say, I think we're doing too much.
Oh,
never, ever. Yet every year I get 500 texts or screenshots. Coach, I don't think I'm doing too much. Perfect. Right? Because if you think you've done enough to do an Ironman, you've done too much. Okay? Sebastian Kienle said it before I'll probably butcher the exact quote, but the year he won the Ironman World Championship, He had a foot injury, which is coincidentally super common for people who end up in the top 3. They happen to like get hurt running 2 to 3, 4 months out, or 2 or 3 months out before the race. They stop running a lot and end up on the podium, right? Like Tim O'Donnell, 3 years ago was second place. What happened? He had a foot injury. He did a lot of aqua jogging, and biked a shit ton. What did he do? Second place, right? Fastest American time, I think, ever at Kona. If you feel like you did plenty or more than enough for an Ironman, you did too much. Right? For traditional training wise, and what you would get out of a book that just overtrains the hell out of people, you're beating yourself down and you wonder why you have nothing to give on the race day, because the race day is going to ask so much of you, right? So much of you. And we've said this many, many times before. I would take a really well-trained 70.3 athlete that's fit and fresh and ready over an overtrained Ironman athlete who's done, 700 plus mile rides and 50 mile bricks and whatever it is. I'll take 7.3 athlete all day, every day, because they're fit, they're fresh, not just physically, but mentally. And this isn't you always rip on people that, say to take the shortcut. This isn't the shortcut. It's just called appropriate dosing for athletes, and not going, because what happens is people like to feed people's insecurities, right? And the best way to feed people's insecurities and to shut them up rather is to give them more, because that makes them feel secure. But as a coach, it's not your job to make them feel secure about that. It's your job to give them the right amount so they get fit, so on race day they can perform, right? Because athletes ask, I want to go longer. Nope. Sorry. Like, you might want to, because that's your own insecurity. And you see all these people on Facebook that, do these outrageously long workouts. Do yourself a favor, go back and check them out. And see what happened. Like, that amount of training, get your life back, right? Give yourself 8 more hours a week back, and see how well you did. Go do a minute to investment, data launch or whatever. And it's like, figure out, all right, so they put this many hours into training, got this much time, but I can put this much in and get this much time. I'm winning, right? I get my life, I get recovery. I'm doing quality sessions. I feel pretty good. I'm ready to go. And that's just, but it'll be like that forever. It'll be like that for all the days Ironman is around. People will always overtrain and feel like they've got to do 25 mile an hour runs. Hey, the women's winner who crushed the field in the pro field, long run, 17 miles. One of which she knows that you don't, right? The ones that are doing, and that 17 mile run probably took her an hour and 45 minutes or an hour and 50, right? And you've got age groupers who don't have near the experience and near the ability doing 3-hour runs, some of them off a bike, right? And you wonder why you're not getting faster, and because you're just overstressing and crushing your body to the point to where you line up to the starting line with a toppled over cake that's gone stale from 3 months ago that peaked in February when your race was in April.
Yeah. I had an athlete last year that happened. We were just kind of new together, had been working a while, and he did a 70.3 in late July. And that's what we were training for. And so I gave him a choice week afterwards, and then I was like, hey, let's talk next week and see where you want to go from here. And then we got on the phone, we're talking, and Carl, I'm talking about you, but he was chill.
Family matters.
He's just like type. He's not super tight. He's just real chill about something. I was like, yeah, where do you think you want to go from here? And he goes, well, I forgot to tell you, I'm doing Ironman Wisconsin. It was like 4 weeks away or something like that. And so I was like, oh shit, this.
Okay.
But we, kind of just didn't go crazy. Maybe he put in a long ride at 4 hours or something. And then tapered back, or got up a little bit and then tapered a little bit more. But when he got there, he did well. But I remember coming off of that second loop of his Ironman, I knew that was going to, it's always the problem, right?
Always.
The second lap. And I was right there for him. And I'm like, dude, you just got to suck it up right now. Mm-hmm. I know you got it in, you just suck it up. And he did. And he had a solid race.
Listen, and we said it again.
I don't think he had anything over 4 hours on the bike.
Right. And I'm not advocating to going out there and putting yourself in really, really, really hard conditions every time you go work out, right? Because it's too much, right? It's just like putting yourself out there in hard conditions. It's the same as doing too much training, right? You can't physically and emotionally beat yourself down like that every single time you go out there to prepare for it. But you have to see how your body reacts. It can't all be brand new. And again, stop saying you've ridden the course on Rouvet or whatever course you didn't. You saw it online. You didn't write it. You saw it. Okay. There was literally nothing about what you did virtually that will be similar to race day except for the visual, right? And even then, it's probably going to look different because you're going to have 3,000 other people on it. It's just different. So expose yourself to situations that require you to adapt and learn and figure it out. Like one of the best comments we got, because I'm a fairly conservative bike guy in terms of power numbers on race day, because it is all about the run. Because 10 watts more on the bike might get you 3 more minutes, but it might cost you 20, right, on the run. And it does. It requires an enormous amount of patience for athletes to stick to that. And one of the 2 stories from that, one of the athletes, it was his first one. He was like, yeah, I was pretty conservative on the first loop. I was feeling pretty good. And then I came around for the second loop and he's like, I was just passing everybody. And I had to go back and check to make sure I wasn't over biking, and I wasn't. I was right on course, but everybody kept fading back and fading back and fading back because people undoubtedly fought the wind so much that they just paid for it, right? They paid for it. And the other thing is the patience, again, and we mention this all the time, and I think it was even more evident in a course that really throws a lot of different kind of conditions at you, like Texas, is that it's all about from the time you take your first stroke, the time you cross the finish line. Like the amount you might use in the front end, multiply it by 10, right? On the back end of what it's going to take or what's going to take out of you. We had 2 athletes end up on the podium and one that missed it by a minute and a half. And they all got into 3rd, 4th, and 6th after mile 20 of the run, right? They get running their way through the field because they still had energy, right? They still had pacing, right? They definitely didn't have 20 mile runs either. Most I think were 16, 17, but it just takes an enormous amount of patience to do that. But that's also the hardest part, is to have patience on a day because on the bike, most people, they just wanted to be off. I want to be off the bike. Mm-hmm. And what do you do when you want to be off the bike? Kick up the power, right? Because I want to get this ride over with as quickly as possible. But then what happened? You were on your run hell of a lot longer than you probably planned because you overdid it, right? And you overdid it. Your time was still more, right? And then the heat and the wind just took it out of you, right? It zapped you. And that's the other big thing. There was a lot of athletes, and I think I heard from a lot of athletes that we work with and then read about and talked to some other ones that did it, that a lot of people did not feel well on the bike course. A lot of people didn't feel good. I have one theory, and a lot of people are blaming on the water, the water in the lake. Well, if you didn't do a pre-race swim and you swam race morning, it wasn't from the water, because it takes longer for even if it's like infested with bacteria and whatever, it's going to take a little bit longer to get in your system than immediately happening. That it doesn't happen that quickly. Now, if you did a pre-race swim the day before in that same water, that could have affected you, right? It could have, because there was a lot of athletes about vomiting and doing whatever. And, they're still broken out in hives and stuff like today, 5 days later. But then the biggest thing is dehydration and heat is what made people just start heaving, and it causes GI distress. That's what did people in, was the amount of fluid you would have had to have taken in to keep up with the amount of sweat you had is enormous. And most people probably fell so incredibly short. And this isn't to give people a pass, because we should all train at least as close as we can to doing the best we can. But most people probably couldn't have come close to taking in 40 to 48 ounces of water or fluid an hour with the amount of sodium they needed for such a hot, humid, and windy day. And then you kind of go, then you have, again, how hot you got, how hot your core temp was when you had the tailwind, because there was nothing, versus I bet if you race it, you probably go back and think, I wonder how often I took a drink in the headwind, right? You're over generating, you're increasing your core temp, you're probably putting out too much power, and you're getting really, really hot, and you're not taking in enough fluid, right? And so people were just way behind. So I think that was one of the big reasons why athletes got so behind and you had so many stomach issues. The water obviously is the easiest one to blame. And again, I think there might be something to that from the day before, if you swam the day before. But if you didn't, and you had issues on the bike and then on the run, obviously you're just hot, like heat exhaustion. You got weight. You're just hot. You say you're just hot. Like there's nothing you do about it. You're probably dehydrated, and it does. It causes GI stress.
You kind of got into patience there a little bit ago, and I just want to talk a little bit about what that means to me. I think about patience, and a lot of times it's like hold back, but for like if you think about driving, I used to travel around with this singer-songwriter guy that's a acoustic rocker. And I just took a year off and we drove. But he used to be big into meditation. And we used to crank the music and stuff like that. But then like years later, he told me, he's like, I just drive now. I have no music on. I just breathe and I meditate. And he goes, it's so weird because it's like driving. You're like, what the hell did I just, 10 miles went by. I didn't even think about.
Miss your exit or
so
something.
It's like, he was talking about how he was just breathing and just kind of like trying to, meditate as he was driving. He said the drives went by in his mind so much quicker because he wasn't thinking about all kinds of other shit. And never fails, right? We got to get somewhere quick and you hit every stoplight and you're just pissed off. Everything's so like when I think about doing a race, to me, it really is. And I practice this a lot while I'm training, it's just sort of get into that meditative space where you're just breathing. And you're not thinking about a bunch of other shit because I think that's when time kind of crashes down on you. And if you can get into a good practice and habit of just flowing and really breathing and just concentrating on breath, shit just starts clicking off. You know what I mean? My best races, I can remember that, where like you're not going, oh, where the hell is mile 7? Jeez, it's never coming. It just sort of shows up if you get into the right place. And I think during races, there's two elements that I like to use because when you get to an aid station, you can break from that a little bit and kind of have a little fun with people, and, just get yourself in a smile or whatever you want to talk about, but just say hi to some people and and then just get back into that groove and just be breathing and putting one foot in front of the other, putting one arm in front of the other. And just, it's the same from the swim, the bike and the run. It's just really this mindset of just being in your zone and not being all like, man, well, what am I going to do on the run? And riding and thinking about other shit. It's a practice, really. And to me, that's what patience is the ability to sort of turn inward and just breathe. Because it happens on the bike too. I'm sure you've had these races where you're just clicking along and you're just feeling like you're not thinking about anything. You're just pedaling. I go back to mountain biking and the first advice I ever got was like, this guy was like, don't think about anything. Just keep spinning. Mm-hmm. Just keep spinning. And it's boring as, like if you're not used to that mentally, you can just go nuts. But if you get practice to get into that mindset and you just keep spinning your legs, just, within not crushing them, just spinning them, mm-hmm. You just keep going. And then suddenly time sort of stands sturdy, like flies by, I should say.
Yeah.
It's patience.
And it's the hardest.
It's so hard. But that's why my point was you got to practice it, I think, when you're training.
Yep.
Can't be always like, that's why personally, that's why I just don't really like to train with people. And because I like to work on shit like that, and I don't like to have weather conversations while I'm running, whatever, like it's hard to really, like we went out the other day, we did that. Yeah. I think for the most part, we ran up, we got out there and you took me up the damn mountain. It's like, you ever run over here? No, I haven't. And the whole first 2 miles was straight up a mountain or, not really, John, because I know it's not, snow capped here, like Vermont, but it was, for here it was
yes, it was.
But we were breathing, it was just
nice, easy.
I think we had a word or two here and there, but not much.
Oh yeah. And then
you ever been to Ruby Falls? Nope.
We were, and you asked that, not me.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
that was on a flat.
Yeah, it was funny because we were running shoulder to shoulder until we passed the lady that said that they had seen rattlesnakes up there. Then all of a sudden you peeled back right behind me and let me lead the way for about a mile.
I didn't know they were out there.
Yeah. It was a straight
I didn't want to get too wide.
Yeah, we're shoulder to shoulder, just kind of easy. And then all of a sudden this lady with the dog comes out of the tree line.
Tell me what went through your head the next mile.
She goes, hey, just you seen a couple rattlesnakes back there. I'm like, oh shit. And then all of a sudden I look over and Mike's gone. I look back and he's like right behind me. And I was like, oh my God. What went through my mind? Run right in the middle.
That's what I was doing. I didn't want to get
you were waiting for me to take to make sure I took the bite if anything happened. I was like, man, this is really,
Well, no, because he would have
probably
been slow on you, and there's a straggler behind him. I'm gonna get. Now, where you look, do they hang in trees? They don't. I don't like rattlers.
Rattlers don't hang in trees. No,
snakes do though.
Some.
I didn't know where to look. I was looking for rocks in the pathway, like big rocks where they were sunning or something. I don't know what they do, but
I was just trying to stay in the middle because I thought, if it's gonna hit me, it's gonna have to have some reach on it. And if it's got the reach on it, then good for it.
I wonder if he would, suck the venom out of my calf.
No.
I didn't think you would, man.
No, I would.
And I was like, I don't think I'm flexible enough to get my own venom.
I would call the park ranger ASAP. Yeah, ASAP.
Like,
all right, sprint down to Ruby Falls. Be like, hey, we got a guy that got bit. Go see him. I got to finish my run. I'll check back in and make sure here's my emergency
hopping down
contact
on left
number.
on one leg.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could have put a little apple cider vinegar on it. It would have been fine.
If I'd have had it, I'm sure that would work.
And then so
it's magic.
And again, like listen, we like to give it to you how it is. And that's just how it is. And I think, again, if you weren't a participant in that race, then you let people be the experimental, the species for you to remind you of how hard it is. It's so hard. And again, things seem harder now because we do everything in our power to avoid it, right? To avoid everything, to avoid any kind. And I can tell you this just from like a mental and emotional standpoint, like, verbalizing and kind of going through all the emotions I had with Kona's passing on the podcast Tuesday was insanely helpful for me to do and just to talk through and then.
Yeah, you can't boil it up.
And to heal, right? And so you just boil it up. But it's you have to do those things. And I think, again, like we've become so obsessed with, comfort and ease and anything we can do to make things. Meanwhile, life seems like it's getting a hell of a lot harder. And then sometimes I have to wonder, is life really that hard, or are we just getting that much softer, right? We're not preventing ourselves from hardening opportunities, right? To learn and to grow and to go back, because there's no way in a ride or run or whatever it is that you could have gone back on race day if you hadn't done anything outside and been like, I remember what this feels like. You didn't. You know why? Because you weren't, right? And it's not always about, you can't replicate it perfectly, but you can at least give yourself more tools in your toolbox to be like, you know what, but I did it. I overcame it. I felt pretty good. Then you have to disassociate the fakeness that is the miles per hour and the distance covered, virtually and whatever it is, and just stop pretending like it means anything when you actually get on your bike and you have to ride outside. It just doesn't. It doesn't. And you're always going to be slower and it's always going to be harder. That's just something to wrap your brain around. Yes, do it if you don't have order for it. Figure out a way. I'm a huge fan of the trainer. We're both. I prescribe at least 2 sessions a week on the trainer. If you got, wear yourself out. It's great for effort, intensity, to be controlled. And it's great for time. But on the weekends, get your ass outside, but again, people become so comforted by what they see that they're afraid what they might see outside and be like, they rather live in denial.
What if it rains though, man?
It rains on Zwift.
Oh,
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, it rains on it. Rains.
So rain sound headphones.
Yeah, it's fine. Until I've been on it.
I don't think. Yeah, man. It's like I think things are harder in a different way now, and it's all because we're so in our heads with computers and phones and that it's all that mental stimulated stuff. And whereas before, think about, whatever, 15 years ago, if like your toilet broke or something, you didn't go to whatever before YouTube. Now it's like everybody can figure that shit out and do it, rather than kind of really get in there tactile stuff, shoveling, you had to kind of learn the hard way a lot more. And it didn't seem that big a deal. So I think that's what it is, man. We get so in our heads now. It's so easy to do that. And, instead of going to run, you kind of want to go watch a video about how to run first, before you actually go out and do it. And it's like, I better do this the right way. Let's go see if somebody tells me how to go run this the right way. And then you get out there and you can't do it because it's not right for you or whatever. And you haven't experimented enough with your own body and what kind of things work for you to really, learn it. Because that's the other thing, right? Is like, I've talked about this before, like everybody can do anything now because they just watch a video, but that doesn't mean they're a master of it.
It doesn't mean it. Yeah. Or everyone on the internet knows everything because they read a headline.
100%.
Right. It's like you got to get out there and you got to experience everyone has their own reality. So make it your own reality. Right. And that's just, you've got to put yourself through, instead of spending so much time in, doing so many hours, do less hours and put yourself through real life situations and real world, that have the real world applications, right? You can't watch a YouTube video and know how to change a tire unless you've done it, right? Like, and that's just one of those things that people, I'll watch a YouTube video, then practice it. But people are afraid. We become so terrified as a society to do something and we might fail, right? Then but I don't want to do it because I might feel, incompetent in what I'm doing it. Then do it again, right? Then do it until you feel competent, right? Then, like if you feel incompetent, do it again until you feel competent at it, right? Like, don't stop shielding yourself so much from the disappointment. Like, people are so hard on themselves that they, again, like you said, we become so hard on ourselves in so many ways because there's so much social media and so much, opportunities for comparison and so much, looking back on data and expectations. It was like the people have become so terrified of disappointment that in training, they're not willing to do things that are required to feel, to go, because I might just be disappointed. So who gives a shit? Get back on it, do the horse, like get back and do it again the next day and figure it out. Like, you can't learn lessons and apply them without, like, perfect example. I was going through, hating to do homework this morning. We were reading a book and he was getting frustrated that he was like, this one's too hard. He's like, this is too hard. I said, well, this one is supposed to be hard because that's how you learn, right? You got this new book to read because you mastered the last one. If you just keep reading the old one, you're never going to learn anything different. But he was frustrated. He's like, no, I gotta be patient. I gotta learn. And he has to be okay not knowing, right? And then do it anyway and figure it out. But we've become so terrified of putting ourselves in a situation where we might feel, again, incompetent or insecure, or we might see there's a dent in our own, ego that we have and vision we have of ourselves, that, like, we're supposed to, like, mess up and not do good at things. That's how we learn. That's how we adapt. That's how we, lessons are provided, that we can take and master. I'm like, seen it, been there, done that. Well, if you haven't seen it, you can't know that. And that's when you're going to suffer. And that's what you don't want to have that on race day, right? You don't want your first experience to be X, Y, and Z on race day. You want those experiences to be in training that you can fall back to give you more confidence on how to perform on race day.
Yeah. And I mean, at what point do you kind of put the reins on information? Because, we've done a lot of races, individually, and we've done over 500 podcasts. And now we've been hanging out together, talking triathlon, and we've been through so many different situations. And really, most of our, it's like, I have a big problem with people trying to,
sound like George Costanza.
I got a big, maybe it is, but like trying to expose knowledge when they really don't have it, just because you're saying, like, they may have read a headline or they, that's sort of how the world feels right now in a lot of ways. Like, wow, that's not how it is. I saw a headline, I read an article or something, and who knows who wrote the article, who knows, but whatever, we could be putting all kinds of shit on the internet and just writing these articles, and people are like, this is how it is. But really 99% of my thought process behind coaching is really based on experience and the stuff we've been through, the stuff we've
reality
talked about, and the things that we know work. Nothing works for everybody, right? But for the most part, we've seen a lot of situations, and we know in our guts that might be a bad idea, or that might be a great idea, or you can do it, or we've seen. Trust me, I think sometimes it's like, I'm sure, like, the instructors at Navy SEAL Buds Week or whatever, like, you got, I'm sure they're probably maybe not the most encouraging. They're probably hard asses, but they've been through it, so they know you can do it. But when you're in the moment, you can't even imagine that you can do it sometimes. But I think that's a lot of what I try to impose, is just sort of like, look, I was in the same boat, man. I don't forget that shit. I was like some dude that came out of nowhere and had no idea about anything. If I can do it, I'm sure you can do it.
It's fantasy life, right? Most people are looking for a magic pill, right? And that magic pill is usually filled with snake oil. And that's why snake oil salesmen are so rich, because everyone's looking for a shortcut. Everyone's looking for a magic pill. Like that's, if our podcast ever explodes and we become more than, a mediocre, rarely listened to podcast, it's because we became full of shit. It's because we started. True. Yeah, it is. It's because we jumped the shark, and we went corporate, and we started shilling things we don't believe in to make a couple extra bucks. And we told people that they can take shortcuts to working out 7 hours a week, or doing this and taking that, and putting a bracelet on, and going to this diet. Then we become full of shit. But I'd rather us just give it to you like it is and straight. And again, like you said, it's from experience, like from 15 plus years of coaching for me, and a ton of years coaching for you, and experiences and working with different kinds of athletes all over the world and all different kinds of levels that have achieved everything. And that's just the reality of the situation, and but it's hard. And I'll leave you with this one hard piece of reality to save you a few dollars.
I got it too.
If you don't plan or don't feel confident that you can run more than 20 miles of the marathon, don't spend $400 on super shoes. Don't go spend $300 on carbon plated speed shoes that you're going to walk 20 miles in, that have the ankle stability
of probably worse for you,
of plastic. Right? I joked with an athlete on Training Peaks. He went out and just blistered a taper run getting ready for St. George next week, which we'll do a pre-race. We'll do a pro preview that next week. But he was in the A6, like meta speed skies. And he said, it's kind of hard to run, fast in these. They offer more. I said, yeah. I said, they offer, in my opinion, offer more stability than the other ones, but he also planned to run the entire marathon. And I said, yeah, I've heard of people, twisting their ankle in the Nike Vaporfly sitting in their kitchen chair. That's how unstable they are. Yet people buy them and they walk 15, 20 miles of it. Like, wouldn't you want more stability in your shoe for a 26-mile slog? Like, save yourself the dollars, man. Right? Save yourself the dollars. Like, maybe buy some gray. By
the way, I don't know if you talked about this or I talked to somebody else about it, but you know what the big thing is on college campuses and high school for that matter, shoe-wise? Hokas. Is that something else? You talk about getting soft, man.
My mom wears Hokas.
Really?
Yeah, so does my Mimi.
I went to that basketball tournament at high school over here, and all these kids weren't rocking around with Hokas on there in high school.
Getting
like,
soft.
dude, man, that is just like, you might as well stay in bed.
Getting soft.
One quick, if you're having trouble with your diet, apple cider vinegar, man. One shot of apple cider vinegar a day. Just do it and don't expect anything, and just maybe naturally you'll see what happens.
Yeah. And that's why we don't get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, because
we're shilling apple cider vinegar. Cheap. You know what you guys should do? Listen, I'm telling you right now. If you want to increase your performance by, on the bike by 20 watts and raise your FTP in 2 weeks, do me a favor. 2 extra glasses of water every day. Okay? 8.5 hours of sleep. Limit stress. Have fun. Be grateful. You're welcome. No one's going to buy that book. We hope you appreciate it. Yeah.
We should try that. Try and sell a one-page book.
I know people, we can barely get people to listen to our podcast. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. And I will say before we close, I appreciate all of the kind words and text messages and emails and Facebook posts on people reached out after the podcast or this week about my dog passing. So much appreciation, and also just an overall appreciation for, again, the opportunity to voice that on a podcast, and not have to pretend like I was okay because I had to, meet sponsor obligations and, shill out the best 10 tips to transition, to a triathlon. It's true therapy. It's therapy for you and I, and we hope it's therapy for you. But we love you. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. Check the gear tab and get it while it's hot and get it while it lasts, because it is flying off the shelves rapidly, and then we'll have a little bit of a replenishment for Chat 70.3. Check the online store out there. If you're interested in any kind of coaching, click on the coaching tab. Check out all the opportunities and offerings we have there. And then, as always, if you need anything from Mike, you can reach him, CrushingIron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me specifically, I'm at C26Coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. See you later.